This has absolutely nothing to do with the law. As was noted earlier, at most you're talking about a misdemeanor that would have already expired under the statute of limitations. I'm not even convinced that there was really a misdemeanor that Trump committed. So my fellow panelist here is celebrating that the rule of law has been vindicated and overturned 234 years of American legal tradition. I would challenge her to see if she could possibly articulate how and what crime Trump committed, because so far Alvin Bragg, the DA, has failed to do so. The judge in the case, Judge Merchan, has failed to do so, and they can't do it because Trump didn't commit any of the crimes for which he's been convicted. Francesca, you're accusing me of fascism. That's a big charge. All I would point out is that it's not my party that's imprisoning its political opponents right now. So
I was about to say one of the key tenets of fascism is you imprison your political opponents.
So Piers Morgan brought a panel on his show yesterday that consisted of Kevin O'Leary, a criminal defense lawyer named Mark Geragos, Daily Wire commentator Michael Knowles, and progressive political activist Francesca Fiorentini, who had no clue what she was talking about and got roasted over and over again by Michael Knowles and the other Democrat that was on the panel, which I found pretty hilarious. So welcome to What in the World, a show for patriots who want to take back the American culture, because ultimately, as Breitbart said, politics are downstream from culture.
If you're going to bring a criminal case against one of the most reviled people in Manhattan and pick a jury in Manhattan and expect them to do anything but convict him, then I know nothing about the criminal law that I've been trying cases about. That was a slam dunk for the prosecution from the get-go.
Let me explain there for a second. Manhattan, where they had this case, voted 95% for Democrats in the last election, basically leaving Trump no chance at all of being acquitted.
But I'm not criticizing the jury. I criticize, number one, the prosecutor for bringing this case. Part of what makes the system work is prosecutors have to make hard decisions when to bring a case. Now, the jury did what they were given. That's on the judge. The judge, there's no such thing as directed verdicts in criminal cases. This was basically a directed verdict based on the jury instructions.
Which, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the same thing they did to Alex Jones.
Francesca, my question for you is, I understand how joyous you must be feeling that Donald Trump has been convicted because he slept with a porn star 20 years ago and may have shuffled some business papers about it. But why is it good for America that one of your 46 presidents has been treated in such a humiliating manner?
Why, that's a great question, Piers.
Why do you guys not see that this might help him rather than hinder him in the election?
I happen to believe, Piers, that it's good for America when you hold the person who has the highest office in the land to the standards of the American law. And in this case, New York state law, where he committed these crimes. I happen to believe that it is a telltale sign of coming totalitarianism, fascism, skirting of the law when you allow a president to simply do whatever he wants and actually never hold him accountable.
Look, I don't disagree with Francesca over that statement, but to her point, we should also be prosecuting Joe Biden, Barack Obama, George Bush, etc., right?
Out of interest, why is Bill Clinton able to have sex with an intern in the Oval Office when he's president and lie to the American people about it on national television? And why is he able to pay off Paula Jones $850,000, 4 times as much, 5 times as much as the Trump payment to Stormy Daniels, to get rid of a sexual harassment claim, again, while he's president? And he has no criminal court recourse for that.
Another good question, Piers. And look at her face. While he's asking this question, she's like, what are you talking about? I have no clue what you mean. She's so conveniently dumb or actually in a cult. This is the behavior of somebody that has Trump derangement syndrome.
I don't think anyone is making that case, Piers. I'm
asking you, what's the difference? What's the difference?
Or any predator. The difference is that he didn't cook the books financially using his own, using back channels in order to pay.
So paying somebody off who says you sexually harassed her, paying nearly $1 million while you're the president of the United States, and then having sex with an intern in the Oval Office and lying about it, that's fine because he's a Democrat.
Piers, only the
Francesca?
leftists in your mind are making that argument.
Oh, what a wonderful answer.
I think it's incredible that she accepted $130,000 from Michael Cohen, because honestly, if I had the misfortune of sleeping with Donald Trump, there is no amount of money you could pay me to keep quiet about it.
I mean, I would say it's very unlikely you would ever get the offer. I do think there's a ridiculous double standard here that will come back and bite the Democrats.
Well, this will only come back to bite Democrats if they lose their grip on power, and obviously they don't think that they will. This is why President Biden the other day, when he was walking out of a press briefing, was asked, Mr. President, Donald Trump says that you are imprisoning him because he's your political rival. What do you say to that charge?
Well, we have
And he stopped walking.
I'll stop you there. We have the clip. Let's play the clip.
President, can you tell us, sir, Donald Trump refers to himself as a political prisoner and blames you directly. What's your response to that, sir?
I mean, you look like Jack Nicholson in The Shining at the end of that. But yeah, I mean, Michael, to pick up your point there, that's the clip you're referring to.
Yes, and it's pretty clear this is not a man who thinks that he has to be accountable to the American people. When you look at the federal charge against Trump, there was a poll that came out when that charge was brought that showed 62% of Americans think that it's primarily politically motivated. They just don't seem to care. And so this has been a ratcheting up, as we've all noted on the panel, of trends that have been built up for some years now. Some would say going back to Richard Nixon. But certainly in the early Trump campaign, the Democrats tried to stop him from being president by spying on him and cooking up fake intelligence, ironically enough, with Russia. And that didn't work. Then they tried to throw him out by impeaching him twice. That didn't work. Then they tried to kick him out by rigging the election and changing all the voter rules, in some cases in contravention of state constitutions leading up to that election. That did get him out of office, and he did leave office, but then he didn't go away. He kept running again. So then they indicted him 4 times. Now they've convicted him. They're going to threaten to throw him in prison. Pretty soon they're going to threaten to send him to St. Helena. But this has absolutely nothing to do with the law. As was noted earlier, at most you're talking about a misdemeanor that would have already expired under the statute of limitations. I'm not even convinced that there was really a misdemeanor that Trump committed. So my fellow panelist here is celebrating that the rule of law has been vindicated and overturned 234 years of American legal tradition. I would challenge her to see if she could possibly articulate how and what crime Trump committed, because so far Alvin Bragg, the DA, has failed to do so. The judge in the case, Judge Merchan, has failed to do so. And they can't do it because Trump didn't commit any of the crimes for which he's been convicted.
And Michael Knowles is 100% correct in that assessment. And did you notice? Keep an eye on her. She squirms, she shakes her head. And the funny thing is the Democrat in the middle, I forget his name, the intelligent man who is a lawyer, he's laughing at her, and he's also laughing at Michael Knowles, but he's not laughing at Michael Knowles because he disagrees. He's laughing because of the absurdity that what Michael Knowles is saying is actually true.
Well, let's just ask quickly before I go to Kevin. Francesca, just on that point, what crime did Trump commit?
It was financial crimes. It was white collar crimes. That is exactly
Which
what
one,
they
though?
charged him. He was convicted on.
What was the crime?
It's New York State law.
I understand. What was the crime?
It is New.
Francesca, actually.
I don't even like it. It is.
Well, hang on, Mark.
He just got convicted on 34 counts.
Francesca, what was the crime?
Of like cooking the actual books.
What was the crime?
You are not allowed. So you are not allowed to use your own financial, like your own money, to pay off somebody, and then he logged it as something different. He logged it as just a regular payment, but he was actually paying off this porn star to keep quiet, which, if he hadn't been running for president, would not have mattered, but he was, and so it impacted campaign finance laws in New York State. Okay, that is what Juan Merchan just oversaw this.
Oh, that's what it was. Now we all know.
I want to go to Mark. You're the lawyer. Is anything Francesca just said, is that actually the crime?
Look, let me just say, I like Francesca a lot, and we probably agree on 80% of our worldviews. However, Francesca, the way you just described it, call me afterwards and I'll educate you, because that's not what happened. There was no theory that was given to the to the jurors. The jurors were told it could have been campaign finance, it could have been tax, it could have been false books. They were told they didn't have to specify, and specifically told they did not have to agree unanimously.
And he's explaining the judge's instructions to the jury.
That's what irks me. Lifelong Democrat, no fan of Trump, never voted for Trump, never will. But I will tell you, as somebody who has spent his entire career with kind of taking on unpopular causes and holding the government accountable, I have to tell you, I do that for a reason. And the reason is this kind of shenanigans, and that's the best light I can spin it, in the criminal courts has no place in a federal election.
No, I agree.
The campaign finance laws were federal, not state, and the state laws had nothing to do with it.
I want to go.
And that is a fantastic point that I've yet to hear anybody else make up until now. He basically just pointed out that the campaign finance laws that Trump supposedly broke, they're actually a federal crime. Yet, he's sitting in a state-ran courtroom. How can the state charge a person for a federal crime?
Kevin, you are a very successful businessman, as Trump has obviously been in his career too. Do you think, in all honesty, if you were caught up in something like this, and I'm not for a moment suggesting you would want to have a one-night stand with Stormy Daniels, but if you went down this road and ran for office, or not run for office, if you just ran for, say, to be CEO of a company, do you think it would ever have led to a criminal case? Because the argument is that a regular business guy who's not actually running for the presidency would be treated very differently, and therefore the law has not been seen to be fairly applied here.
I think half the country in the U.S. believes this is politically motivated, which is not a good thing. It's having more impact on the state of New York, which is seen as unstable. Whether the case has flaws in it or not will be solved for in the appellate system. So most people assume, because of the importance of the situation, that it will go through the appellate system as quickly as possible, if necessary, to the Supreme Court. In the end of the day, these things balance themselves. The damage done to New York started back in the other litigation around real estate. Quietly, large projects, those are over $1 billion, are not being started in New York currently. People are waiting until things stabilize. And I've moved projects out of New York to places like Oklahoma, North Dakota, West Virginia, Montana, Pennsylvania, much more stable environments. It's too difficult to work in that unstable environment. And the real problem is you can't raise institutional capital right now. The capital from around the world thinks New York's a little off kilter. Now, something else to consider about Alvin Bragg, which I think history will prove to be correct. You've got to remember, Donald Trump only 24 months ago, in the middle of the first term of Biden, did not have control of his party. About a third of them were rebelling, if you want to use that word, because they were concerned about the controversy around Trump and they were looking for new leadership. And he was challenged. But something happened that changed everything. And this is the law of unintended consequences. Alvin Bragg started charging Trump. And immediately the entire Republican Party coalesced behind him almost in 48 hours. Of course, the country bifurcated into this being a political witch hunt using lawfare, as a tool, and we're still debating that. But here's what's really interesting. If Trump becomes president, I think he has a big debt to Alvin Bragg. Right. Alvin Bragg is the kingmaker.
Yeah.
He made Trump president by polarizing the country so much and motivating the base so much that in the last 42 hours, Trump has passed $60 million in fundraising. That's an all-time record for him.
And I'll cut in there and just give the updated number that is over $200 million that Trump has raised since the verdict came in.
So what's happening here is this unusual time, and I understand that you may not like that as an unintended consequence if you're Alvin Bragg, but I think history will show he made Donald Trump president one more time. And that's just the way it is.
You know what? I completely agree. I think it's one of the most willful. I'll come to Francesca for a response. It seems to be one of the most willfully stupid acts of self-harm I've seen any political party commit. You had Trump right on his knees, done. And you've revived the rotting political corpse of this guy, and you've now got him roaring back to the White House. And the only thing, as Mitt Romney, of all people who hates Trump, and represents by absolutely the most moderate part of the Republican Party, when even he says Democrats think they can put out the Trump fire with oxygen, it's political malpractice. He's right, because the only thing that could further guarantee a Trump victory is if they try and put him in jail on July the 11th, which, by the way, I wouldn't put it past them.
And that's where I'll stop and ask you guys, what do you think will happen to the country if they go and try to throw Trump in jail on July 11th? And do you think they'll actually throw him in jail, or will it be, house arrest or community service or something like that? Will it be kind of more of the same of what we see now, or will it be a continued reinvigoration of the Republican Party? Well, actually, let me check that. Not necessarily the Republican Party, because I think there's a lot of people in the center and there's a lot of Democrats that are going to vote for Trump in this cycle that aren't necessarily in support of the Republicans. And that's kind of unfortunate, because we need Trump to not only win the election, but we need enough people to win in the Senate and the House, so where Trump doesn't have this opposition like he did in the second half of his first term, where he couldn't get anything done. And unfortunately, the first half of his first term, the Republicans weren't behind him. I think, and I could be wrong, but this treatment of Trump is going to reinvigorate those people, maybe for the first time, those leaders, to actually have Trump's back. Because once they get Trump, essentially, once the Democrats get Trump, who's to say that they won't go for a Mitt Romney next, or a Jim Jordan next, or whoever? And technically, they already are going after people like Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene and some of these others that show openly their support for Trump.
It's remarkable times. We haven't seen polls out since the verdict, and so everybody's waiting to see what happens with the unintended consequence of this in terms of just independent voters. And so here's the thing to realize. If you polled 1,000 independent voters, and they will decide the election, most people agree with that in states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, et cetera. I bet you, and we've had the same on this panel, we're debating it, 99% of them have no idea what this case was about at all, and have no idea what exactly he did, and I'm not sure they care. The fact that more than half of them think it's politically motivated is unsettling. Yeah. And as I said earlier, will get finished off in the appellate system. But this is a remarkable time in American history, and not that great for the American brand, as you started talking about at the beginning. This is more like a Venezuela kind of Cuba, Banana Republic story. You got the porn star. All this stuff is really not what G7 countries do to their leaders.
I completely agree. This is Francesca. I just don't get. We see you're laughing, but Mitt Romney, for Mitt Romney to come down so squarely on the side of Trump.
I do want to just say, look, so the crimes were falsifying business records. Now, the reason I didn't know that before is because I'm not a lawyer and I'm not the journalist who is anchoring this entire show, who should have told you that it was falsifying business records. Now, on
and because those aren't felonies.
That most Americans don't care about falsifying business records. I agree with Kevin and I agree with Piers. However, I will say this. Most Americans also are very much go on gut. And they don't like that a candidate is now a convicted felon. But moreover, this candidate is someone who, and it is not the crime, however we know, cheated on his pregnant wife with a porn star in a hotel in Lake Tahoe and then bragged about it and then tried to pay her to shut up and also paid another Playboy bunny to also be quiet about their relationship.
Bill Clinton had sex with an intern in the Oval Office.
It's the only thing you have.
Well, it's not a bad thing to have.
You're going back. No one's
unlike
talking
Trump,
about
he was
Clinton.
president at the time.
And again, I'll just reiterate that Trump has never actually admitted to having sex with Stormy Daniels. The fact that Michael Cohen gave her $130,000 of hush money is not some type of secondary admission of guilt for Trump's wrongdoing. Trump is simply maintaining the position that I never had sex with her, and Michael Cohen's the one that paid her the $130,000. Am I wrong? He looks like an innocent guy to me.
Oh, I don't mean to pick on Francesca too much here, but it's very telling that even the liberals who are going on television to defend this ruling have to Google in the breaks to figure out what the crime was. and even then, I'm sorry to say, misrepresent what the actual supposed crime was.
She just got caught Googling during the break. I knew it. Did you guys see it? Michael Knowles recognized it immediately.
That's the same thing.
Yeah. It's not a felony, not a crime. But anyway, that's a point for another time. The reason why even the great defenders of this conviction can't, yes, to you as well. The reason that they can't articulate this is because it's not really a crime. That's why they had to upend 234 years of precedent for this. And it gets back to a point that you made earlier, Piers, and that you made, Kevin, which is that Alvin Bragg really overplayed his hand. Sure, he overplayed his hand to some degree, but what else were they going to do? Donald Trump was always going to be the Republican nominee in 2024. A lot of people feel that he was gypped in 2020. He's the biggest guy in the party. It was going to happen. And Trump poses a real threat to the liberal establishment. He's not a Mitt Romney type Republican. He has different views from the so-called uniparty on things like trade, on things like immigration, and things like foreign policy and war. Trump posed a major threat. That's why they took such extraordinary measures for the last 8 years to take this guy out. They weren't able to do it politically. They weren't even really able to do it at the ballot box. So what's left? The only thing left to do is to try to throw him in prison so that he can't campaign for the election. I agree, it's backfiring.
This is not a federal case, Michael. You know that. It's not even a federal case. Why do you think that it's not a DOJ case? It's not a Biden case. It's not a Merrick Garland thing. It's New York state law. So the idea that this is somehow politically motivated is all made up in your head, because what you do
Biden's DOJ is also prosecuting Donald Trump twice.
Is you groom your audience for fascism and you set them up for a complete takeover of the DOJ. This is all about allowing Trump to get away with any crime he wants, as you sort of slighted and sort of, laid out very nonchalantly just a little bit ago. He was impeached twice. Doesn't really matter that he tried to blackmail the leader of Ukraine into digging up non-existent dirt on Joe Biden, but that doesn't matter to you
Joe
or
Biden
your
threatened to withhold arms.
You want to make sure. You want to make
Francesca,
sure that
you're accusing me of fascism. That's a big.
He can.
Francesca, you're accusing me of fascism. That's a big charge. All I would point out is that it's not my party that's imprisoning its political opponents.
Right.
Now. So
I was about to say one of the key tenets of fascism is you imprison your political opponents.
So I'm just going to say it. Go out there and vote Republican all the way down the ticket. There's no reason to vote for a Democrat unless you agree with everything that lady just said. With that, I'm going to go ahead and check out. I hope you enjoyed this one. Sorry it's longer than normal, but I thought this interview was just fantastic and I couldn't seem to clip out very much. So with that, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys in the next one.